Hey everybody, I'm Jeff Kelly, and look who's with me. Ivan Novick, product manager for Greenplum, is here. Ivan, I understand pivotal Greenplum 5.3 has just been released, so I thought this would be a good time to catch up, hear a little bit about what's new in the database, maybe hear a little bit about customer momentum too. So why don't we start with the enterprise adoption you're seeing? Are there any particular market sectors or types of companies you're seeing gravitate towards Greenplum these days?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Well, about 2 years ago, 2015, we did our first open source release of Greenplum, and the momentum has just been building since then. So this year, we're adding new logos at a record pace, and we've got customers now in 34 countries. And really, this year is the first time we're starting to see customers convert from open source to commercial support, which is really encouraging because there's been enough time for people to start using the open source and then decide, okay, hey, I want to take it to the next level and use Pivotal's commercial version as well. In addition to that, we've got we're headquartered in the United States. Pivotal and the Greenplum company started in the United States 10 years ago. So we've got a very large American business, but as well, we have a huge presence in China. And we're operating in 34 countries. So we've got customers in 34 countries around the world, including governments from around the world. They're government customers, as well as financial and all different sectors. The strongest sectors tend to be financial, government, transportation, telecom, industrial. So all across the board, we're seeing growth because nothing's changed in terms of the explosion of data. There continues to be more data and more use cases for storing, querying, and analyzing that data.
Absolutely. So let's dig into some of the details around this release. So let's talk containers. Obviously, containers are extremely popular with developers. It allows them to build their applications once, and then they can run it on any infrastructure. They don't have to customize the different infrastructure environments. And of course, containers allow you to build software that runs the same in test and dev as it will in production. All good things for developers. We haven't heard a lot about how containers are being used in terms of supporting and operating analytical databases like Greenplum. So I'm curious, is that beginning to change with Greenplum 5.3? How are you and your team approaching Greenplum from a containerization perspective?
Right. Yeah, it is definitely beginning to change. And Greenplum is a big data system. It's a scale-out system. So we definitely want to leverage a large amount of systems to process the data and to build a database out of. Now, historically, there was a bunch of overhead that came with virtualization and containerization. And that overhead has been reducing over time. So the overhead is quite low right now. And so now we're looking at the convenience and the portability of systems and how to build the most efficient large system that you can using clusters of computers. And so now that the overhead is lower, both virtualization and containerization are definitely first-tier players in our ecosystem. Very specifically in this release, we've got what we're calling query containerization. In a sense, it's really our resource group feature where different users run their queries in different C groups. So C groups is one of the key technologies of containers. And by using the operating system to isolate users between each other, that allows us to have more multi-tenant systems. So if you had, for example, two departments, let's say the finance department and the analytics department, and you want to guarantee a certain amount of resources to each, you can use C groups and containerization type technology in order to guarantee the resources required for each user's queries. The second thing we have in 5.3 is procedural language containerization. So you can take a Docker container. Developers can customize it. Let's say they love Python, Anaconda Python version 3.4. or they love any specific type of R language and libraries. They can create a Docker container and push that container out to the cluster, and those containers can be used for the Python and R calculations, and they can segregate that environment, so you get the customized developer environment in the container and do computing jobs inside Greenplum with them using PL Python and PLR. And the feature there is called PL Container. So those are two of the top things that we've done recently, but there is more stuff brewing in R&D for containers as well.
Okay, well, we'll certainly keep an eye on that.
Yep.
Another hot topic, of course, is ecosystem accessibility. So, Greenplum's a great analytical database. We love Greenplum, but there are other tools, there are other processing engines that data scientists and others use, depending on the task they're trying to achieve. Spark and Hadoop come to mind. So what steps have you taken in 5.3 to make Greenplum ecosystem accessibility a little bit better, making it easier to use Greenplum in conjunction with these other tools, these other processing engines?
So first and foremost, we now have PXF. PXF is the Pivotal Extension Framework, or now called the Platform Extension Framework, actually. And the Platform Extension Framework allows you to create plugins. So you can store all of your data in Greenplum, and then as well, you can create an extension plugin that can access data that's not in Greenplum. So let's say you want to access data from Hive, or you want to access data from HDFS or from another system, you can use a plugin. And what that means is that you'll do SQL queries directly to Greenplum, and then using the parallel nature of the compute, we can process data that's actually stored externally. So as you start, for example, you say, okay, I want to store, I want to access historical transaction records from my credit card system that are stored in HDFS. So select and do some calculation. The data is really coming from HDFS. We're processing it in Greenplum in parallel, and then summarizing and joining that data in the database, and then consolidating the results back up to the user. So not only do we provide out of the box plugins for Hadoop, but you can also create your own plugin. We've got partners and customers. For example, someone came up, they want to connect to Luxio, they want to connect to Apache Ignite, any kind of system you want to connect to, you can build your own plugin, and you don't need to contribute to the core of Greenplum database because it's modular. You can just build that plugin and connect in. We've also just put out a connector for Spark. So people who want to use Greenplum data and do Spark calculations, they can get a high-speed, high-bandwidth parallel connector to pull data out of Greenplum, do calculations in Spark, and push results back to Greenplum.
Okay, so it's really making Greenplum a good community player, play well with these other technologies.
Yep.
So you kind of alluded to, you don't have to contribute back to Greenplum, which kind of, again, alludes to the fact that Greenplum is an open source based database.
Yep.
So what are you guys doing in 5.3 to make it easier to actually use the open source version versus the productized commercial version?
Sure. Yeah. So 5.3, very exciting, big news is that we're now going to be releasing open source binaries. So in the past, you had to compile the code yourself, but with 5.3, there are Ubuntu binaries that are part of the personal package archive. So you can just go to your Ubuntu command line, do apt-get add repo, apt-get install Greenplum, and within seconds, you're going to have Greenplum on your system. It's a huge productivity gain for getting more folks to use Greenplum. Obviously, the open source is the free version, so we expect to see a big adoption and a lot more users now that you can easily install the software with the binaries provided by the project.
Okay.
One interesting thing also I've seen recently is the uptick in contributions to the code itself. So we just recently had a nice contribution from folks outside of Pivotal who merged in a new compression algorithm into Greenplum, which allows for enhanced, faster compression of data and to make it smaller. And so it's great to see the community building and to see people contributing code, even when they're not employed by Pivotal to do so.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the sign that you've got a real community starting to grow.
Yep. But as far as the binaries, it's now very simple, and we're going to have. There's a nice blog that you can see in the links below the video here. And it shows the very short steps required to install Greenplum on an Ubuntu system.
Okay, and again, this is in contrast to in the past when you'd have to basically compile the database yourself. This just makes it a lot simpler, a lot faster to get it up and running. Great.
And Ubuntu is also an interesting choice because Ubuntu is very popular as a cloud-native OS, and a lot of the kind of Kubernetes systems and Cloud Foundry systems and open source users prefer Debian and Ubuntu-based systems. So providing the ready-to-go binaries on Ubuntu, I think, is a strong open source statement as well. We still obviously, as Pivotal, provide Red Hat Enterprise and SUSE Enterprise builds, but for open source to be able to just grab the Ubuntu for free, I think is a nice step.
Great. So another advancement you've made in 5.3, I believe, is making it easier to get Greenplum up and running on Google Cloud Platform. Tell us about that.
Yeah, right. So the three big vendors in the US for cloud platforms, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, all have marketplaces. And so we've always supported Greenplum running in the cloud if you install it yourself and if you basically set it up yourself. But we have had, up until today, Amazon and Azure automated installs on the marketplace where it's a single-click install. And now with 5.3, we have Google Marketplace as well. So you can just go to the official UI of the cloud vendor, and you can select Greenplum, select how much resources you want to put behind it, and deploy a cluster. So that's the marketplace offering, and that makes it for a really quick way to get started in the cloud with Greenplum.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a theme here that's all about making it as easy as possible to get up and running with Greenplum, which obviously is going to lower your your time to insight, basically. Which but enterprise isn't looking for that, so I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, another area of focus, which maybe for some people isn't quite as sexy as some of the other things you're working on, but is critical, especially for these enterprise use cases, is backup and recovery. Yep. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, and kind of how did you prioritize these capabilities? Was it from direct customer feedback?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So we do have pretty good interaction with Greenplum users. We go around the world. We've got customer seminars in cities around the world where we get to meet our customers who use Greenplum in production. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of banks and governments and really high-profile deployments of Greenplum out there. And so, Backup Restore is certainly up there at the top of where they like to see the investment in the project so that they can have the most seamless and quick and reliable backups out there. In Greenplum 5.3, we now have a new version of Greenplum Backup Restore, completely redone from scratch. We actually utilized within Pivotal some designers. So we have designers in the same sense that Apple has designers who go and look at from the user perspective. So we had designers looking at how people use Backup Restore. We did probably 30, 40 different customers got interviewed, and we found all of the kind of things that make people happy, not happy, and we've rebuilt the Backup Restore. And so we're really happy to provide a new platform that people can use, and that backup can become a thing that you really don't have to think about, because it just works and it does what you need. So right. 5.3 has the first version of the new backup program, and highly encourage folks to grab it and start using it.
And that's another point you made, is that you're constantly talking with Greenplum customers. So we would encourage Greenplum customers out there to provide their feedback, whether it's around backup and recovery or anything else for that matter.
Absolutely.
That's really about how we teach people to build software here at Pivotal, and we practice it ourselves. So I think that's an important point to make. So one more question. I'll throw you a little bit of a curveball. So last week I was at Spring One. A lot of people are at Spring One platform, our big conference out in San Francisco. I think we had about 2,800 people, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, it was about cloud native everything. Cloud native is the way to go in terms of building applications and your infrastructure to support those applications. It seems to me, and this is something I've covered in the past here at Pivotal, and I've talked with a lot of other folks internally, I would love to get your take. It seems to me that data kind of got, not left behind in the whole cloud native conversation, but maybe didn't quite get the priority that I thought maybe it deserved. And we're still working out what it even means, cloud native data. So I'm just curious, what's your vision for cloud native data? What does it mean to you? And what role do you see Greenplum playing in that?
Right. Okay. So cloud native really means the system was designed with the cloud infrastructure in mind, right? And so different folks in the data warehousing industry have approached cloud native in different ways. Pivotal has a few very opinionated points of view around cloud native. One is that it should be platform agnostic. So we're not going to build a cloud native database, for example, that is completely targeted and tied to Amazon's technology, right? We want to build a infrastructure agnostic system. And secondly, we build software, right? We build and sell software. We're not building an ops team to run stuff for people. We're not building a data center. So we're looking for an approach of cloud native data that is open source, that is agnostic to any one individual infrastructure provider, and which is a software-based product where we can make the most high-quality cloud-native database, and then people can run it on their own And so, interestingly, with Spring One and with a lot of the excitement, Kubernetes and Pivotal Container Service is coming up as a big initiative, and we've evaluated that from the Greenplum point of view, and Kubernetes actually looks really interesting from Greenplum point of view because Kubernetes has a wealth, a diversity of tools and ways that it can be leveraged. At the end of the day, it provides a cloud of containers. And from a Greenplum point of view, and as well as persistence options and how to map containers to persistent disks. And so from a Greenplum point of view, we want to build a massive cluster of compute, which can be organized and which can be mapped to the data, right? We need to be able to know where is the data and keep track of it accurately. So really think that Kubernetes as a technology is a kind of a platform that we could start looking at to build a cloud native database on top of, in which, if you look at Greenplum's architecture, which is really MPP Postgres under the covers, the ability to run, let's say, one Postgres instance in every container and have it have dedicated resources and dedicated storage, which can be mapped persistently. It's really exciting. And so I think that we're looking seriously at leveraging PKS and Kubernetes as a infrastructure agnostic and open source and cloud native fabric or platform that we could really take Greenplum to the next level. And so that's something we're looking at seriously and could really change many things for us in the future and make the system more powerful.
Absolutely. So we'll keep an eye on that as time progresses. Well, Ivan, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy.
Jeff.
I'll let you get back to building a great database. And, we really appreciate it. And as you mentioned earlier, everybody who's watching the video here, you can check out some of the links below.
Check the links below.
Yep, get to some of those resources we talked about, and then get started with Greenplum 5.3. So, Ivan, thanks a lot.
Yep. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.